Mr. President.
Senator from Michigan.
Mr. President, first of all, let me agree with the distinguished chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee that, in fact, we did come together on strong sanctions against Iran that has brought us to this situation in a bipartisan basis. We did come together on the process that would create legislatively a way for us to make a decision. That was done on a bipartisan basis. What I regret is at this point, even though we are following through on the legislative process that we adopted, that it now has become so partisan, which is not good for America, it's not good for Israel, it's not good for, frankly, the world to see this happen. And so while agreeing on part of what the distinguished chairman said, I have to disagree on many things. I will not take my time to go into them now, but certainly the process we're using is no different than any other major bill, healthcare reform, financial services reform, and it was set up in what we passed. And so we can try to make it to some partisan issue now. The reality is we've all thoughtfully taken a position. We have voted. Everyone knows everyone's position. And so now we're just in the process right now, unfortunately, I believe, of politics, which does not help us move forward for our country or for our allies. And so I want to speak to what I'm deeply concerned about, which is the next vote we're going to have on Thursday, and speak to a very important young man who is an American hero who is caught in the politics of what is happening right now. Mr. President, Amir Ahmani from Flint, Michigan, is an American hero. He served his country as a Marine between 2001 and 2005 in Iraq and Afghanistan. He served with valor. He served with honor. He was awarded the Combat Action Ribbon and the Good Conduct Medal. But this morning, Amir woke up in an Iranian prison. He's been in that prison for 4 years and 19 days. During that time, Amir has been tortured. The prison is notorious for its deplorable conditions. And while he was there, his father in Flint, Michigan, has been battling terminal brain cancer. The Iranian government is playing politics with Amir Ahmani's life. Unfortunately, though, now, today, the Senate Republican leader is also playing politics with Amir's life. The imprisonment of this veteran, this American hero, is being used by the Senate Majority Leader in a transparent effort to score some cheap political points, in my judgment. And it's appalling. No American should ever be used in this way. None of our hostages. This is a young man whose parents are desperately worried about his safety, who have been waking up every day for the last 1,479 days, hoping this would be the day. This would be the day that they would learn that their son, Amir, would be freed. How does it show respect for Amir's mom and dad to use their son's plight and possibly threaten what is the negotiations that are going on now in order to make a partisan political point and jeopardize his release? Mr. President, we have had a vigorous debate on the international Iran agreement. And I know from talking to colleagues and being in many, many meetings that those on our side have been very thoughtful and thorough, and certainly the chairman has as well, in coming to our positions in a highly charged, a difficult, and a very complicated situation. I spent many weeks myself, and we all have, in classified briefings, meetings with nuclear experts, and meetings with ambassadors, and personally calling each of those who were involved in the negotiations in the P5+1 countries. Meeting with constituents in Michigan who feel very passionately about this issue on both sides. And I've made my decision. The decision that I believe is best for America and for Israel and for our other allies. I did not make my decision on the day the agreement was announced, before I had ever read it, or even before it was announced. Regrettably, as many Republican colleagues in the House and Senate did. So we've had a vote in the Senate. We've had 2 votes now on this issue, and today or tomorrow we will have a 3rd vote. Not because the majority leader expects a different result. We've all taken our positions, but because he wants to score political points and bring in, as part of that vote, 4 American hostages and what's happening to them. And those political points will be scored at the expense of Amir Ekmani from Flint, Michigan, who has served his country honorably. Mr. President, I've gotten to know the Ekmani family, and I know how much their son's freedom means to them. Any of us who have children can understand what they are going through. I have personally talked with the president and other officials at the highest levels of our government who are working tirelessly to secure Amir Ekmani's release and return him to his loving family, along with the other Americans held hostage. This is a diplomatic mission. It's a humanitarian mission. And yet the majority leader is on a political mission that is not going to help. He wants to interfere with and disrupt the international nuclear agreement with Iran. I understand that. I understand his position and others. But they are willing to use Amir and other American hostage in the process, and that is wrong. This political stunt by the majority leader does not help bring Amir home. It doesn't help bring the other 3 Americans home. It just adds more politics to the situation. Now, what's very disturbing to me, after always having bipartisan support, one of the things that I could always say to my constituents that when it comes to the issues around Israel and the Middle East, we always have been together on a bipartisan basis until now and what's happened in the last few months. And unfortunately, what's happening on this debate and the vote we'll have tomorrow, bringing in the American hostages into this debate on Iran, is not the first time we are seeing partisan politics interjected into this debate. And I still will never forget the 47 Republican senators who wrote a letter to the supreme leader in Iran, our enemy, the Ayatollah, to tell him not to pay any attention to the President of the United States. I have to say, Mr. President, if it were reversed and it were 47 Democrats, everything would have halted in this chamber. There would be impeachment hearings. We would be called traitors. It would go on and on and on. It is shocking to me. If this had happened, if we had written a letter to Saddam Hussein when we were debating going into Iraq and say, don't listen to the President of the United States, or anybody else for that matter, any other president, that would be a national crisis, and there would be outrage. And yet somehow 47 Republican senators can write to the Ayatollah in the middle of an international negotiation that was difficult at best, when we know that Iran is within 3 months of having a nuclear weapon right now, by the way, that we should all be concerned about. And I know we are, except some of us act like we can go back and renegotiate something, which will take years, when they're going to have enough materials within 3 months. And so in the middle of all of that, almost half of this chamber writes to the people who are funding terrorism and who are opponents and enemies in terms of the Ayatollah, and say, hey, by the way, President of the United States, Don't listen to him. Don't listen to him. Interestingly, also in that letter, Senator Cotton said in that letter that, of course, it would take 60 votes to pass anything in the Senate, which, of course, it does, and which, of course, we're debating now, and folks are acting like it doesn't. But the Ayatollah was sent a letter that said it would take 60 votes. So whoever wrote him might want to check in with him. So here we are now. We've seen the ultimate politics of members in this body writing to our enemies, saying, don't listen to the President of the United States. And now we're in a situation, after voting twice on a very serious, difficult, emotional, controversial issue where there are people, serious, thoughtful people on both sides, because the vote's not going the way the majority wants, so now they bring in the 4 hostages from Iran. You know, Mr. President, there's a tradition in this country when it comes to issues of national security and the lives of men and women who serve America. And a quote was coined by former Michigan Senator Arthur Vandenberg: politics stops at the water's edge. This picture we are very proud of. It's right outside here in the reception room. Very few United States senators have their portraits painted on the wall in the reception room. And I'm very proud that one of those is a former Republican senator from West Michigan, Senator Arthur Vandenberg. He was the great nemesis against President FDR. He hated the New Deal. He went after President Roosevelt at every turn on his domestic agenda. But as chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, when we were being attacked in Pearl Harbor and World War II was happening, he stepped up and said, politics stops at the water's edge. And for over 70 years, that was the way the United States of America was operating. That's the way the Senate operated. We have lost that. And I am deeply concerned, not as a Democrat, but as an American, for where we find ourselves today on matters of such seriousness, international threats to our country. We can debate them, we can have differences. If someone loses the vote, it becomes time to come back together and find a way to move forward to keep America strong. Agreement, to make it stronger, to focus on the non-nuclear sanctions and other things that we need to do together against Iran, to focus on bringing our heroic Americans home. But this is not the way to do it. This is not the way to do it. So I stand today to reject what I view as a political stunt. And the vote tomorrow is deeply concerning to me and to people in Michigan who want to bring Amir Ahmadi home. This is not politics. This is somebody's life. It's about the future national defense of our country and our allies and the world. The vote is the vote. We have taken our positions. It's time to come back together as Americans. I yield the floor.